Good morning, everybody. Just out here pretty early in the morning. Some of the last days here in Wyoming before we head back to Texas. I'm in my coat. It's starting to get chilly. Down to 39 this morning. But Texas is still pretty hot. It's going to be in the 90s or so when we get back. But the weather isn't why I wanted to talk. I wanted to talk because we're going to see some big changes. And it's easy to say that the world is going to hell. But with big changes come opportunities. And if you're stuck in the past, it might be hell. But if you adapt, which we have to adapt because everything's always changing, nothing ever stands still. We might have the illusion of the weather being the same year after year, but it never is. Records always being broken. We might think that our neighborhood is never going to change, but 50 years later we look back at it and we can't hardly recognize it. And society is that way. As we came out of World War II, our values were much different than they are now. I mean, it is literally night and day. And if our values are going to change that much, everything else is going to change along with them. So, whoever gets to be president, I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. We're going to see big changes. Now, one side gets elected, that side is going to benefit. The other side gets elected, the other side's going to benefit more. It's always going to be that way. We can't do anything about that. I tell people all the time that a smart person wouldn't run for president. That is a terrible job. For me, with my values, I just couldn't see it because you just get dumped on. Sure, you got followers that love you and all that, but my goodness, the things that get said, and nothing is sacred in your past, and people make up stuff, and accusations these days are true. It doesn't matter what the facts are; they're true. Because you can't put them back in the bottle when somebody's accused. If somebody accuses you of something horrendous, half the people are going to believe it no matter what you do. So you kind of got to have a big ego to want to do that, and some thick skin. And unfortunately, it might be that most people want to run to benefit themselves, and maybe there are a few that really would like to change the world for the better. But I don't think a lot are like that. You take Elon Musk. I really think he's genuine when he says he just wants there to be a good future, a future to look forward to. And he's got so many haters, it's just crazy. So whether you love him or hate him, I think he's genuine. And I don't see that in politics. But the elections are going to happen. Somebody's going to win, somebody's going to lose. All hell might break loose. because I don't think either side's going to accept the 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 election. They may, but I think that it's it might not be pretty, but in the long run, things will be okay. They always are. You know, when crisis hits, it doesn't stay forever. And just like when good times hit, they don't stay forever. So whatever happens, we're gonna be okay. So, you know, you don't have to make yourself suffer so much. Just accept that change is gonna happen. And nothing is nearly as terrible as you think it is in your mind. Things always work out. And we'll see you next time. Me, I'm back again. Still in Wyoming. Later in the day now. So, just thinking back on, you know, when I was real young, I just had a pretty good feeling that there was something more to the world than what we could just, you know, walk around and see and touch and taste. But then I got a little older and found out no, science had it all figured out. It was all just an accident. They had it pretty well sorted out. They knew how the hydrogen and helium from the Big Bang condensed into masses of stars, which generated all this pressure and energy and spit out material, that all the elements, and they had it all worked out. So I was a little bit disappointed. But, you know, got to face up to the facts. But then I had an experience, had to stare at my own mortality right in the face. I mean, it was inches away. And during that experience, I knew there was something else. I was afraid that there wasn't, but I had this nagging understanding that there was more. And so as I recovered, and I started looking at science, and what did science actually know? Oh, they don't know what consciousness is. What? Surely they would know what consciousness is. They knew anything. What? They don't really know what matter and mass is. It's some kind of vibrating field of energy. But all these woo-woo people are just wrong because they're calling it high vibrations and all this stuff. They're saying the same damn thing. And the more I saw how little we really knew, and the more I saw how the door was opening to something more could be, I started going deeper into it. And in meditation, I know this sounds weird, but there are stages in meditation where you go through these levels of, at first it's just kind of restful, and then it's blissful and even euphoric, and then you go to a more steady place, and you realize that you are the observer of all this. You're not your body, you're not your thoughts, You're something else. You're a point. You're a point of of witnessing. You're watching all this happen. You can sit there and watch your thoughts go by and think how silly that thought was. Where did that come from? It wasn't from anything I've ever experienced. Then you can watch others go by and you go, oh yeah, that's part of my history. I remember when something happened that would have caused that thought. And you can go into your imagination or what the future might bring you. But you realize that you are just witnessing those thoughts. You're not producing them. And a matter of fact, they're very surprising when you sit back and watch what your next thought will be. And, well, it just opened a can of worms. Now the door is wide open. Wide open. And there is more to this life. So that's what these videos are all about. And believe it or not, I think I know enough to get a rough feeling for what it's all about. So stick with me, watch these things. Give me a like. I need some subscribers. I don't have, I've got like 100, just a little over 100, and I appreciate everybody for sure. I appreciate every thumbs up that happens. But I really need to get this word out to more people before I get too much deeper into this thing. Because you really need a little bit of background before we go much further. So anyway, tell your buddies or something. Spread this thing around for me. Thanks. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the channel. I would ask if you would just drop down and give this thing a like before you discover you don't like it. That's a joke, I hope. Anyway, I'm just back from Wyoming. We're now in Texas. Last night I was doing a meditation on I am. And I was laying in bed watching my thoughts. As I watched my thoughts, it struck me it was like watching the pages I was turning in a magazine full of uninteresting articles, just thumbing through to see if there was anything of interest. And as I was watching these thoughts go by, I slipped off into something different. I became total awareness. I was aware of myself watching thoughts, but then I became aware of that awareness. I know it sounds convoluted, but I became pure awareness. And I've heard it described as the void, in a place of just pure love and bliss and knowledge itself and all these things. That's what I was. It's not like that's where I was, that's what I was. And unfortunately, my ego discovered that I was there and wanted to examine it, and boop, just like that, I was gone, back in regular, everyday consciousness. And it was really, even for a brief moment, probably less than 10 minutes, before my ego couldn't resist trying to dissect what was going on. And, of course, when that happens, you pop back out of those altered states and into your everyday walking life here. These things are hard to talk about because our language doesn't really cover them. The Hindus and the Buddhists, they have the language, but that language is even stranger than just me muddling through all this, because it's really gotten a bad go in our society. I asked the internet, actually, a chat bot, what the New Age meant. What was that? What was the definition of that? And it pretty well described me. So I guess I'm New Age, but I don't want to. I don't want to relate to that title, because everybody, they talk real negative about New Age stuff. Well, by golly, the old stuff just didn't work. We need to get out of that box. And even though I believe I'm firmly in the New Age, I don't want to use the title that will shut people down before they even understand what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. So that's that. That meditation was really, really great. And even though it was brief, I did come back with quite a bit that I started hurrying up and writing down this morning before it slipped away like a dream. One of the more bizarre things was about vegetarians. And it just it stands out because it's so different. And the thought was that a vegetarian is taking advantage of the most defenseless, I want to call them creatures, but the most defenseless life form on the planet. Plants can't get up and run away. They can attack you with poison if you get the wrong one or something like that. But basically, they're defenseless, and it's unfair to think of plants as something less than a life. We talk about not wanting to kill animals because we're taking a life. Well, plants are alive. You're taking a life with a plant. But here we are on this world where we have to eat. So to survive in this world, we have to kill something. And it didn't have to be that way. We could be here just like a plant and absorb the energy directly from the sun. But our purpose was not to do that. Our purpose was that we had to kill to survive. And for the most part, we had to kill to survive. And that seems like a dilemma, but it's really not. It's just a matter of facing the fact that we're in a violent world. Violence is a natural thing. Now, we don't have to be violent against each other, but we don't have to feel guilty about eating food. and even killing insects that are infesting our house or something like that. These things, this is the way nature works. So that's that. There's more to it, but that's the basic thing. Then the other thing is that there is a guru inside all of us. I've actually heard some gurus speaking on the internet saying that the body doesn't come with a user's guide. Well, I don't think that's correct. I think we all have a user's guide. We just don't realize how to get to it. And you find that user's guide by sitting still and meditating, watching thoughts, being quiet enough to listen to that inner mind. You know, we think that when we wake up, we see the world completely as it is, and we're in complete control of ourselves and our desires and our free will and all this. But none of that is close. We don't see the world as it is. We create the world in our mind with reflecting electrons that bounce into our eyes and cause electrochemical energies and fire neurons in our brains and create the images of what we're interacting with. Touch is the same way, but you say, well, I can still reach out and touch it. That doesn't solve the problem, because it's the same way you don't really touch anything. The electrons in your hands and the electrons in the visible world, let's say the table that's right here. When I touch this table, I'm making that up because the negative electrons that are orbiting, they're not really orbiting, but are orbiting the atoms in my fingers, are repelling the negative electrons in the atoms of the table. And that force field is pushing against so hard it feels like it's solid. We don't actually touch it. So that is an electric force as well, that we are interpreting as a solid object. Really, the atoms are very loosely packed. There is enormous space in between all of the nucleuses of the atoms and the electrons. And it's just that energy that gives it the appearance and the feel of being solid. It's actually empty space with tiny amounts of physical particles. Those physical particles are the nucleus of the atoms, and those consist of 3 quarks, 2 up and a down, I believe. These quarks consist of a vibrating field of energy. So when you look really close at the particles, the parts, the reality that we're interacting with is a vibration of an energy field. Now, I say that energy field is a conscious field. I say that consciousness is all there is, and we are interacting with ourselves. The field of consciousness that produces these physical objects, and that includes us, is interacting with the same field of consciousness that is separated in a mental way. It's detached itself. It's disassociated from itself. So every piece of the fractal is just as important as every other piece. It's all one thing. And it's enormous and it's tiny because size and distance has no meaning. These are things that we create. The consciousness is not physical. There's no size to it. There's no shape. We are that field of consciousness. We're having this physical experience because this consciousness desires to grow, to learn, and it's going to do that every way it possibly can. And this is an ingenious way to cause itself to experience so many things and thereby learns.